Welcome to the Soul Story Show, where real conversations and soulful stories help you live and write your next chapter. I'm your host, Brooke-Sidney Harbor, and today I'm so excited to welcome someone whose journey is as bold and as beautiful as the title of her book. Joining us is Tash Durkins, a life coach, speaker, and now author of Fiercely Joyful, 11 Keys to Living Authentically and Creating a Life You Love. In this powerful book, Tash shares her transformation from burnout, people-pleasing, and perfectionism into a life filled with boundaries, freedom, and unapologetic joy. And she gives us the keys to do the same. Whether you're in a season of change, rebuilding your life, or ready to step into your power, today's conversation will meet you right where you are and call you higher. Tash, welcome to the Soul Story Show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Brooke-Sidney. I'm so excited to be with you today. It's an honor.
Thank you. Let's just get right into it because I'm excited to talk about the book. So let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to write Fiercely Joyful? Was there a particular moment or a turning point that called you to put this message into a book?
Well, thanks for asking me that question, Brooke-Sidney. Actually, it's been something that was on my mind for years before I did it. And it was because I have these amazing lessons that I learned from my parents that I really wanted to share with the world. My mom passed away when I was pretty young. I was 20. And then my dad about not much long after that, when I was still my 30s. Or excuse me, hadn't gotten to 30 yet. I was 29. And they left me with so many amazing life lessons that as much as I missed them when they were gone, I felt equipped to be, I guess is the best way I can say it. And it felt like just really selfish to not share that with the world. And I didn't want to be selfish. I grew up in this family focused on giving. So I put it on paper and added a few lessons of my own.
I love that. You describe this book as a guide to living authentically and creating a life you love. For you, what does it really mean to live authentically, and why is it so hard for so many of us?
For me, living authentically is showing up in a way where you don't have to choreograph it because it's just who you are. It's what comes naturally. And I do believe that we are all unique and we all have a purpose to serve in this world. And so only then, when we show up in that way, do we get to serve fully in that purpose, whatever that might be. So I am so passionate about helping people find their way to showing up authentically because of that reason. And I know it's hard. And I always have to remember to preface this. My friends always tell me, don't forget to tell them about those authentic parts that should stay at home. Because there are some of those parts, meaning we do have to be mindful of our audience in any given moment, the setting that we're in, right? But the key to always being authentic, no matter what, is showing up in alignment with your values, the things that are your core beliefs, those wants and needs. And that's something you don't ever have to compromise.
Right.
So I think that we lose the idea of that component of authenticity, and we just focus on showing up the same way that we show up at home with our loved ones, where we're vulnerable, etc. It's not quite the same. It's about showing up in alignment.
I love that. So the title alone, Fiercely Joyful, is such a bold and magnetic phrase. Can you share what that means to you personally? Like, why fierce and why joyful?
Yes. So together, fiercely joyful to me means bold truth and sustained joy. That's what it means to be fiercely joyful. And the fierce part is about being unapologetic about it. No one gets to touch or take my joy. It's mine. And so I'm going to protect it at all costs, right? Because it's our birthright. Joyful for me is different from happy. Happy is more of what I see as something that is generated by external experiences. Whereas joy, I see as self generated fulfillment. And if it is self generated, Once again, nobody can take it from me. It's mine. And I can also choose to generate that whenever I want to. So bold truth, sustained joy, and it's sustained because it's self generated.
I love that. Okay, so you were very open in this book about, I feel like, your own authenticity, right? And your own struggles with like people pleasing, perfectionism, and burnout. What helped you finally break that cycle?
I did it for so long, just like so many of us. And interestingly enough, when you continue to do it and don't get the results that you
Mhm.
think you're going to get, that was the thing that kind of broke me of it because I was bending over backwards trying to please everybody, trying to be accepted, trying to meet everybody's expectations, putting everybody else first. And I thought I should, but I didn't get in return sort of some commiserate engagement, right?
Right.
Or I didn't get people supporting me at the same level or even just appreciating what I was doing. I didn't need a one for one, I give you this, you give me that, but I didn't want acknowledgement. And I wasn't even getting that. And at the same time, I was chipping away from my own soul every single time I did that, where I focused on everybody but me. And there's a way, and I do write about this in the book, to be kind and giving and compassionate toward others and still serve your own needs. And so it's that experience of finally learning how to do both that helped me free myself from that over people pleasing type of behavior.
I love that. One of the keys in the book that you talk about is around boundaries as self love. And that to me feels super powerful. I know I've been on a self love journey. I think a lot of us are kind of learning that. How did you come to that realization? And what advice do you have for someone who's afraid to set boundaries?
Great question, Brooke-Sidney. And it can be scary, right?
Right.
Especially if you've not been one to ever set them for yourself.
That's right.
I have a friend who is relentless in boundary setting. And I think having some people in my life around me like that did help. Because that was something my mom didn't do well. She was one who would bend over backwards and always put herself
Mm,
last. Um, but I found that in doing that, putting myself last all the time, I wasn't able to show up fully. I mean, I
right.
know you've heard this saying, you cannot pour from an empty cup.
That's right.
Like you just cannot. And it's twofold. One, I want to be able to show up as my best for you, which means I have to take care of me. And two, my life is easier to create with that sustained joy when I'm taking care of me because it
Hmm.
has to be, again, right, self generated if it lasts.
Right.
So, spending that time meeting my needs with whatever the boundary may be. And it's one example I love to just talk about when people are asking us to do something or inviting us to do something that we don't want to do. We feel this overwhelming need to explain our no. That is, if we're courageous to give the no, right?
Right.
I don't explain it anymore. I
Hmm.
just say, thank you so much for the invitation. I can't make it. That's it. That's it. There's no need to give more than that. And it's because I have a boundary where either there's something else I have to do, I don't have the energy for or capacity in that moment for that event. Whatever the reason may be, I don't have to explain it. I can just honor my need, which was to say no.
I love that because I have also learned that no is a full sentence. And a lot of us have maybe like trauma responses, as you were saying, to we need to over explain. We need to make our no make sense. We want the other person to feel good, which then triggers some of those people pleasing tendencies. So I love how you are bringing up boundaries and having the courage, I feel like, to enforce them. So you also write about the importance of giving ourselves permission, right? Can you speak more on that idea and what we're really waiting for when we withhold permission from ourselves?
Mm, absolutely. It took me so long to recognize that essentially I have personal agency that I was surrendering really for no reason. And when I say personal agency, because I'll just be honest with you, Brooke-Sidney, when people used to say agency in this way, I had no idea what they were talking about. I had to look it up. So when I looked it up, what I found was basically you have your own ability to make decisions for yourself. That's your personal agency. It's your own. Nobody can take it from you. And that includes giving yourself permission to meet your own needs, to engage in your self care. And our habit is to look for others to say it's okay,
Right.
because it makes us feel guilty to give ourselves the permission. We want our loved ones to say, it's okay for you to go on vacation, or it's okay for you to go on a spa. We're going to be okay without you. And the goal is to transition to focusing on the knowing you already have, which is they're going to be fine when you decide that you're not going to wash the dishes and you're instead going to turn in early at night and the
Right.
kids can get their homework done. Whatever that thing is, but just sitting and allowing yourself to sit in the knowing that you already know is true, but you feel uncomfortable executing on it, or uncomfortable letting it come to pass because you feel that you're letting someone down
Mm-hmm.
by focusing on yourself. Both can happen together. Just like I always tell people, joy and grief coexist. You can care for self and others at the same time. There's room for both. And so that taking that agency, your own personal agency, to give yourself permission is one of the most important things in the world, because even when somebody gives it to you, let's just be real. Sometimes you're like, I don't know if they really want me to go.
Oh,
Did they
yeah.
mean that? Because they really want me to stay home. They really want that, or I should really focus on this. I really should go to the play. This is where you have the opportunity to say to yourself, I can do the self-care. I can meet my needs as well as my wants, and come back ready to support, others, with that cup having something in it.
I love that. Now, I feel like women, and especially women of color, why do you think we have struggled with, I feel like, implementing this and wanting to do for everyone?
We, in my experiences and the many women I've talked to, particularly Black women, we were raised that it was our job to take care of everyone in the home, the family, the neighbors, the church, everything and everybody. We were the source and the center of
Mm,
holding it all together. And our mothers and other family members raised us that way because that's all they knew.
right.
That's what they did. And those that came before them did. And now that, and I'm grateful because, in the book, I talk about my challenges with anxiety and depression. Now that we more openly, to an extent, talk about mental wellness and mental health, we can step back and acknowledge the heaviness of owning all of that.
True.
Like, no one person is supposed to own all of that, taking care of everything and everybody. And there's a book that you may have read by Tricia Hershey, Rest is Resistance.
That's right.
Oh my goodness, that book, it felt like it set me free in ways I still didn't realize I needed to be set free. And the opportunity that exists for us today, like, I love Black women. We're in our self-care era, our
Right.
soft life right now, and we deserve it. And frankly, not coming out. What we're going to do is shift the culture. We're going to get everybody else comfortable with us taking care of ourselves. And I think part of it, again, goes back to that not wanting to let folks down. But I have to say, Brooke-Sidney, the other thing is it requires a lot of work on our part, because we have to reset expectations for folks, right? And some folks
That's
don't
right.
want, what are you doing? You're supposed to do. And I'll never forget this moment at work because, in the Black community, we talk about being a representative. You
Right.
represent, sometimes you show up as your full self, sometimes you're your representative. But for me, that also means that people look to us as Black women to speak for the whole because they're uncomfortable speaking up and using their voice. And
Right.
somehow we're supposed to be the ones to say the thing. Girl, when I started saying no, or better yet, just didn't say the thing, I would just sit silently in a meeting because I decided that this thing was not worth my energy. Afterwards, people would come to me like, "Well, Tash, you didn't address this. Why didn't you say what?" I'm sorry, if you were concerned, what stopped you from saying something?
Right.
And I literally said to a coworker, listen, I decided I wasn't going to be y'all's representative today. If this is of concern, you should go ahead and speak with them. I'm not doing it. This is not my issue. And
Mm.
so I think that's the other thing that holds us back. There's some work involved
Right.
in us helping to shift the culture where we got to retrain some folks about
Yep.
how to treat us.
That's very true. It's like we have to reprogram ourselves, and then we have to reset everything around us, our environment, the way we're interacting with other people. Wow. And I feel like that's part of the work. So without giving away too much of the book, because I really want to encourage everyone to go and get the book, can you walk us through a couple of the 11 keys that are especially resonant or transformative for your readers?
Yes, I'd love to. Let's see. One that I really love is a chapter called "Get Connected," and it's about getting in tune with your intuition. And I'm telling you, Brooke-Sidney, once I did that, my life changed drastically. And what I'll say is, it wasn't necessarily a skill I had to develop to hear my intuition. I had to develop the skill to listen.
Right. To listen and trust it. That's right.
Trust it. Exactly. Exactly. And I give some tips in the book about how to recognize when you might be misleading yourself as well, because that can happen.
Right.
But that connection to my spirit, to my own instinct, it's everything. It guides me constantly. And I know when something's wrong. I know when something's right. And it just is something that it's a source, from God, from the universe, whatever you believe, but it's a source of information that shouldn't just be left without consideration. It is worth considering. So I say practice getting in tune with your instinct. That's one of my favorites.
That's
The
that.
other is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I would say that's so good because I think that a lot of us are thinking only with our logical mind. And there are opportunities in our lives, especially in the healing process and the growth process, where we have to use our heart and our intuition. So I love that part of the book.
Thank you. I love that framing. Thank you. The other I would point out, because I think it's especially important in this moment, is the chapter I call Your True Crew. This is about having community.
Right.
And community is just everything to me. And I'll tell you that my dad was kind of the main one who loved community so much. And I talk a bit about this in the book. We would go out to restaurants for dinner, and he was the kind of person that wanted everybody to order something different so we could all try each other's food,
That's
which
fun.
not everybody likes, but that's how we grew up. That's what we did.
That's
And
fun.
then if something came to the table that he loved, he insisted on sharing it like with the tables around us. So literally, he'd start talking to the people who are minding their own business and, hey, did you guys try this chicken? Oh my goodness, here, come, get your fork, come over. Like it was this whole thing. And I'd be so annoyed as a kid because I'm like, can we just have a peaceful dinner without involving the rest of the restaurant? But that was dad's thing. He wanted to share and be in community. And I think I inherited that, so to speak, from him. And so much so, Brooke-Sidney, that I thrive in community, meaning I don't need a big group of people around me, but my small inner circle, right? Your kitchen cabinet, whatever you want to call them, your true crew, but that will tell you the truth,
That's right.
that will be there when you fall, that will help you see you when you're not seeing you.
Mm.
That group of people is so critical. And in particular, in this moment, a lot of change is happening. People are moving, people are shifting their thoughts, their ideas. And that means our community is changing. And we have to get ourselves comfortable being vulnerable enough to
Mhm.
establish some new relationships too, never too late,
Yep.
so that we can have the support system that we deserve. But to me, this community is everything. One last piece there I want to share. I mentioned earlier, I've been talking about writing the book forever, literally for 10 years. Didn't write a single page. Kept talking about it. I had this outline, which didn't change much, honestly, but I kept talking about it. But I couldn't do it by myself. And it
That's
wasn't
right.
until I found a program that was about writing books in community. And the motto was never write alone.
That's true.
When I got it done, that's when I got it done, Brooke-Sidney. So I stopped. When I finally stopped, I used to give myself a hard time and judge myself for wanting to be in community so much and have thought partners and things like that. I'm so over that. That's where I thrive. And so I get to do that.
I love that. Well, putting my book coach hat on, I definitely say that it's so much easier when you are writing with someone else and you have someone else in the world with you, in that writing world with you, because writing can feel very solitary. And so, even if you are self motivated, which some people need motivation too, but even if you are, it still becomes very lonely. And so, having someone or a community with you, I feel like makes all the difference. Having a community, having a coach, having someone that is along that journey with you is invaluable. And then the other thing I wanted to mention just briefly too, that it struck a chord when you were saying that, is that, they're saying now with all the social media, all the internet connections, people have never felt lonelier. And so it is so, so important, I feel like, to start building or rebuilding the community, because your community can change as you get older or your life starts changing. And you're so right about being vulnerable, because I've had a friendship that started honestly from like a group of women where someone actually put herself out there and was saying, I feel alone and I'm down and I want people to hang out with in Los Angeles. And I was able to say, I feel that too. And so did a couple other of us. And so that actually became the fuel and the glue to really help us all start doing more things together. And it's not too late for the women in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. It's not too late to create some new friendships. So I'm with you on that. I'm so happy that you brought up one of those keys. Um, I want to ask you, I know you mentioned joy and happiness, they're different. And joy is not a fleeting feeling. And I completely agree with you. It seems like it's a lifestyle, it's a practice, almost a spiritual
Mhm.
decision. What daily
Yes.
practices help you stay grounded in joy?
Mm. You said it so beautifully, Brooke-Sidney. It is a practice every single day, and certainly one I embrace. And and one that was, I'll say, spurred from my mom. When I was a kid, and my parents were divorced, our bedrooms, my mom's bedroom and mine, were right next to each other with a pretty thin wall. And every night, my mom would be super excited to go to bed because she liked the way her skin felt on the sheets. And so I'd
Mhm.
hear her through the wall, like, "Ooh, it feels so good. It's bedtime. It's bedtime. It's so great." And that made me essentially embrace little things that a lot of people don't even think twice about. And so one of my practices is on being joyful, embracing all the little things, because frankly, they make me the happiest. I have two dogs, and one of them, the oldest dog, Boomer, he gets excited when I get excited, no matter what it is. And so if I'm just having a moment of feeling excitement about the day beginning, about, this morning I was excited I was going to be meeting with you and having the opportunity to be on with you. I was so excited. And I'm like, Boomer, we're going to meet Brooke-Sidney. And Boomer got all excited. He starts jumping. But it's like the key is, I think this is one of the most important practices too, is to not wait for some big moment to experience joy.
That's right.
Joy is in every single moment and everything we do. And you get to have it every day, all day, as much as you choose. It's not
Right.
limited to buying a house, having a child, a new job, all the major life moments. Those are all joyful, but there's lots of smaller ones in between, and you get to have them every single day.
I love that because so often we hear women say that joy feels like a luxury, they can't
Mhm.
afford, because I think a lot of times they've tied it to a thing, as you're mentioning, because they're too tired or they're too busy or they're dealing with too much pain. How do you help women see that joy is in the everyday and it is something that they can afford, right?
There's something I like to embrace called joy rituals, where you can choose what they are for you, but there's a couple that seem to work with everybody. And one of them is a 2-minute joy ritual around dancing. Whether you got rhythm or not, you can find 2 minutes to step away from whatever the thing is that you're doing. Put on that song that you absolutely love every time you hear it and just dance for 2 minutes. Like, you will feel so much relief after those 2 minutes of just giving yourself the opportunity to be present and decompress. Like, it's just amazing. I have done that at work in the middle when I've been sitting we were in a very stressful situation, and all gathered in a meeting, senior leaders, and everybody's just frustrated and tense. And I was like, who got a favorite song in here? Somebody tell me what your favorite song is. And I got one. I can't even now remember what it was, but I pulled that thing right up, ended up pulling up on YouTube, and just put my phone in the middle of the conference table, turned it up as loud as they could. And they were like, seriously, Tash, right now? Like, yeah. And I'm not turning it off for 2 minutes. And we just did we did. And for me, it's a little shoulder. I like a little
Shoulder
shoulder
shake.
dance,
Hmm.
a little shimmy or something. But my point is just giving yourself that moment. You might, if you're a busy mom and you just come home from working outside the home to working inside the home, you might just go right on in the bathroom and close the door and tell the dogs not to come in, because mine do. Kids and dogs stay out for 2 minutes. Play your little song and give yourself a moment.
Yeah.
Give yourself a moment. And I'll be honest too, sometimes those dance sessions have turned into tears because it was a moment to breathe that also turned into a moment of release.
Hmm.
That's okay too. That's okay. You get to have time to embrace the feelings that you're experiencing, whatever they may be, in those moments that started as joy and end up being ones that become expression. And that's okay too. Did I answer your question, Brooke-Sidney?
You did, and it also just it seems so resonant with the whole living authentically and being able to see ourselves and being able to find those joy practices that work for us, right? It's not like taking someone else's and just putting it on you. It's about using that intuition and really listening and finding out what works. Now, I want to talk about the writing more. I know we touched on it briefly. Let's talk about your writing process. Like, what did writing this book actually look like for you? I know that you had the community, but were you writing in early mornings, voice notes, sprints, retreats? I always want to help out my other, writers to be with information and tips and tools from other writers.
I love this. It's great. And now that I'm an author, and you certainly, of course, know this better than me, but so many people ask these questions, and I love to talk about it. I am a morning person, which used to mean at the time, my normal wake up was around 5:15 ish. I was getting up at 4:30 every day, 4:30 a.m. every day, at least weekdays, to write for at least a half an hour, because I knew, there'd be uninterrupted time, no excuses for not showing up, right? And then I also had accountability system with those folks in community, which we would get on Zoom, and they were from literally all over the world.
Love it.
So everybody has a different time of day, but we found a time. We'd all get on Zoom for 1 hour. And at the start, everybody would say what their goal was for that hour. Then we turn cameras off and we'd write. And then there are weekends where I just get up, I'd sit outside with a cup of coffee, and I would write on the iPad. And then, as well, sometimes things would just come to me. And so I get the phone out and do the voice notes thing. So, like, I did a little bit of everything except for handwriting on paper.
Okay.
That I did not do. It just for whatever reason, the laziness of transcribing it is really what it came down to.
Right.
So I didn't do any handwritten work, but otherwise I did all of those things. And I don't think I ever thought I was going to get to my minimum 50,000 word requirement, but
Hmm.
it did happen. It worked. And in fact, I ended up having to trim quite a bit at the end.
I love that. And I think that I know for a lot of my different clients, it's about learning too that to enjoy the writing process, to be in the flow. And that's when it oftentimes it comes easier so that you're not, you know, painlessly getting up at 4:30. You're excited. You've created systems. You've made it fun. You've made it a great journey that's supporting you in this whole process of becoming an author. Because a lot of people don't realize that you kind of step into a new part of yourselves, like a future self or a different self. And the authorship is a process. And so I think when people kind of are able to kind of settle into that space, just kind of get there and be present, it becomes a lot easier. So I love how you found your way with that. Was there a chapter or a section that was the hardest for you to write, like emotionally or creatively? Because you do share vulnerably in the book.
Yes, absolutely. And something else I forgot to say too that I want to mention the what is it, the Pomodoro method? I use
Yes.
that
Yes, the
heavily
sprints.
for
Yes.
30-minute sprints for
Yes.
writing. Oh my goodness. That was important. I found this lady on YouTube who had the perfect Pomodoro method music
Hmm.
and that helped me too. And I just was tired but needed to be able to find a way to keep going. Um, to answer your question, though, yes, it was the first chapter of the book, actually, which is called Becoming Me. It's basically a biographical chapter, and it is it's incredibly vulnerable, and I tell everything that happened in my life, particularly when I was younger, and they were really difficult experiences. And when I wrote it, my publisher and editor were like, seriously? It's the book on joy. And you want to include all these things because I had some traumatic life experiences. But in my heart, I knew I had to share because um, I want people to understand that you can't find joy after trauma.
You're right.
And so just showing up in joy without honoring the traumatic experiences that I overcame felt unfair and not authentic at all. So I did it. It was hard because I'll tell you some more trauma came to the surface that I'd repressed
Right.
and forgotten all about. So it was really tough. And then I thought I told all of my family. I hadn't, and they found out when they read the book. So that was also tough because nobody was upset, but people were upset that I'd experienced trauma and they didn't know and weren't able to support me in that time. So I do tell people be mindful if you are writing nonfiction that includes some of your life story. You
That's
may want to make sure everybody knows before it hits the shelves. But I don't regret it. It was hard to do, but I absolutely don't regret it. And I'm glad it's there. Because here's the thing, Brooke-Sidney, I can't tell you at this point how many women have come up to me and said that that chapter was their life story,
Yeah.
that they felt seen
Yes.
and they never told a soul until they told me about what trauma they had experienced. So that was confirmation for me that it was the right thing.
No, I totally agree with you. There were elements in there that also made it very real and relatable. I think there's pieces that everyone can see, whether it's divorce, new family members, all of the things that happen when someone dies, and all the things that I think we're building our story every day. And so I agree with you to launch into joy where most of us are coming from a different place initially. I think that really helped you, I feel like, lay the foundation. So I think it was very well done. How did you know when the book was done? Like, how did you know when to say, okay, I've written enough?
Oh my God, I want to know what you tell your coaching clients about this, because it was never done. It was only the deadline that saved y'all from having to read some more chapters, because I kept thinking, oh my God, I need to put this in. And at the last minute, oh, I've got to cover this. So I'm leaving it. Like, it's so hard for me. It was so hard to just stop. And then I was like, this doesn't have to be my only book.
That's it. That's right.
It
That's
doesn't
right.
have to be that. Finally hit me, Brooke-Sidney. And then that's when I was like, okay, this is it for edition one. And we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, often it's having people notice when they start to feel complete, and
Mm-hmm.
very similar to what you were saying in the beginning about needing to over explain and re-explain and all of the things. So as we always want to think about the reader too, like how
Mm-hmm.
much are they going to be able to absorb and keep track of and really be able to implement. And there's always room for books and workbooks and second things and later editions to republish. There's a lot of opportunities. So I love it. I think you ended it at the right place, and we're looking forward to like what is coming next. So I want to talk a little bit about your career. Um, you've worked with women through your coaching and speaking. What are some of the biggest transformations you've witnessed when women finally choose themselves and commit to joy?
Mm. It is such a beautiful thing. And I feel so blessed that I get to do this work. And I've done it in my previous work as an executive in the public sector. And I continue it now in coaching. But what I have found really rewarding is I work with a lot of very senior women who have made it to the top. And they have every single semblance of outward success that you would want. Yet they feel unfulfilled and misaligned. And they find themselves sitting in these systems that weren't designed for them to thrive. And when I say that, I mean that is true for all women. That is certainly true even more for people of color. And it's at the very basic level. And I love giving this example. There's a book, and I can't find can't remember the name of the book, but it's a book that's about kind of all the things in the world that were designed for men,
Mm,
including the seatbelt. How uncomfortable is the seatbelt? For frankly, men and women, because I've had plenty of men. But for women, we have a
right.
whole different body structure. And for a period of our lives, some women also have a whole nother human.
That's right. Hmm.
And the seatbelt is so incredibly uncomfortable, and it is still today designed for a man. It's never been changed, Brooke-Sidney. Never. And the question I then have is, well, who can change it? Who can change the system? And I'm working with these very senior women who are at the top conforming and shape shifting to
Mm,
fit the system as designed. And I'm like, if anybody can change it, it's you. It's you.
right.
And if you choose not to, do you think it's ever going to change?
Mm,
And so having that conversation and working with them to figure out what does that look like for them authentically, because it's different for everybody. I'm an extrovert. I'll talk to anybody and do all these things. A lot of women are not that, but they do want to be aligned. And so working with them and seeing these women create space that didn't exist for them, now they're creating it for themselves and others to come behind them. Like, it is, it gives me chills just thinking about it. It makes me feel so good. And sometimes, Brooke-Sidney, it's even the small things where women come together and galvanize around changing the system in a productive way. And I'll give you this funny example. There's a board meeting that I used to sit in regularly at in my public sector job. And many of us were in perimenopause or menopause, the women in the room. And so we were hot all the time, just hot. And so we started carrying hand fans.
Oh.
And then we
Mhm.
started recording. They were pretty, all these, but we started carrying hand fans, and we were literally everybody, in the room could see when somebody needed one, right? And there was this one particular day where I'm just sweating. I take off my jacket, there's sweat pouring down my face. And one of the gentlemen says, "Tash, are you hot?" And I looked at him clearly. I'm
Right.
not going to answer the question you already know the answer to. I said, however, if you feel the need to offer support, I would love a cold glass of water or bottled water or something to help cool me down, or maybe adjust that temperature over there on the thermostat. And I said, and lastly, in the future, if somebody's hot or somebody's cold, can we just let them be and not comment on it? Is that cool? And he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And another gentleman who tended to run hot was like, well, I want the fan, Tash. Can I borrow your So I gave him a fan and he's fanning in the room. And then it became a thing where we passed the fan around and it was no like putting a spotlight on somebody because they were having a biological reaction, right? But it was that, and all the women galvanized and some of the men galvanized and normalized it. So there's this opportunity to create space in these systems by being willing to be vulnerable enough and
Right.
courageous enough to say the thing, right? And then the fan, like I said, the fans were color coordinated. I mean, we had something different every day for our outfits, for photos. It became something fun and enjoyable instead of a spotlight.
Wow. I love that. And you were able to, I feel like, exemplify exactly what you're teaching about being present, speaking authentically, and even reframing and asking for what you needed. So that's such a beautiful example. A simple one, but a beautiful one.
Thank
So
you.
you're welcome. So what's next for you? Is there another book coming, a program, or a movement building from Fiercely Joyful?
Yes, a little bit of all that, actually. I'm super excited. Right now, I'm working on the second edition of Fiercely Joyful. I've been coaching clients around fierce alignment, and I'm going to include in the next edition of the book the framework around what it looks like to be fiercely aligned. We talked a little bit earlier about being
Mhm.
aligned with the values and so forth, and how you use the keys to get
That's
to
right.
that fierce alignment. And then, in addition to that, the other interesting thing that I'm working on is a couple of things that I've just kind of always wanted to do. One is there's going to be a Fiercely Joyful 2026 calendar coming out, and I'm partnering with an amazing young photographer who's going to help me in that effort. And then I'm also doing both in person and virtual events. You mentioned it earlier when you were talking about the community and there in LA, there is this overwhelming need for engagement with one another, particularly with women. And I had an in person event recently. And I mean, you know how it is if you've ever done any facilitation or training and in your coaching, trying to get people to quiet down to go to the next thing.
Right? Mhm.
But folks were just like not having it because they wanted to be in community. So that's another thing. There'll be more in-person events coming soon, so I can support both that. And then for the folks that aren't in the Washington D.C. area where I am, we'll continue with the virtual events as well. I'm also collaborating with other coaches on this Real Talk series, which is about having these conversations with women that people don't normally have, where we speak in the truth and name what's happening. And at the core, kind of beneath all of this, Brooke-Sidney, that's what's most important to me is helping clients find the language to name what it is they're experiencing and what they need. That's at the core of everything. Um, I think there's so much power back to that personal agency There's so much power in naming the thing. And I would say it underlies all my work, but the story about the fans, the personal agency that I feel keeps me from letting things go.
Mm,
That's really what it is. It keeps me from um, failing to acknowledge something that needs to be called out in a very compassionate way, but it doesn't get better if we don't say it.
right.
So all my work moving forward is really focusing on how do we say the thing.
I love that. So, the last part of kind of our interview and our conversation is I feel like one of the more fun and light parts. It's like this fun little lightning round where I'd love for you to just say the first thing that comes to your mind, answering authentically in this case.
Okay.
So, I know you mentioned a book already, but what's a book that changed your life?
The Four Agreements by
Mm,
Don Miguel Ruiz.
yes. Finish this sentence. Joy is.
Mine.
I love that. What's one thing you've had to unlearn to become who you are today?
Ooh, there's so many. But what comes to me first is I had to unlearn being so concerned about everyone else's comfort.
I love that. What's a soulful habit or ritual you swear by?
Reflection.
Right. That's good. What's a mantra or affirmation you're loving right now?
Joy is resistance.
Oh, I love that. That's like the rest is resistance. I have that one on repeat. If your soul could leave one message for the world, what would it be?
It would be that you get to choose joy. It is all within your reach, so don't surrender it.
I love that. Tash, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your truth, your story, and your fearful, joyful heart with us. This conversation was such a reminder that joy is not something we wait for, it's something we choose fiercely and fully. To everyone watching or listening, I highly recommend grabbing a copy of her book, Fiercely Joyful 11 Keys to Living Authentically and Creating a Life You Love. You can find it wherever books are sold, and be sure to follow her on Instagram at OnlyTash and visit her online at www.fiercely-joyful.com to learn more about her coaching, speaking, and offerings. And of course, if you're ready to write your soul story, the one that's been living inside of you for far too long, I'd love to help. Schedule a free book chat by visiting Brooke-Sidneybooks.com. So until next time, I'm Brooke-Sidney, and this is the Soul Story Show. Real conversations, soulful stories. Your next chapter starts here.